rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective. I am your host, Rick. Yes. So an interesting development in the Autopen case, and I don't even think that the New York Times really meant for this to come out and throw, fuel into the fire or gasoline on the fire, whatever you want to call it. But I got all the details here in just a little bit tonight. Also, to AOC, she steps in it again because she's not the sharpest knife in the drawer. In fact, I don't even think she's as sharp as a butter knife. I think a butter knife is sharper than her. Anyway, so welcome back, My News, over on the Rumble channel. She took a leave of absence from the show because she was visiting family. That happens. You're supposed to. But anyway, so it's a new week. It's a new week, and it's a Monday. Let's just put it that way. All right, let's go ahead and get things kicked off. Nana of JJS says a spoon is sharper than AOC, and I got to be honest with you. I agree. All right, let's go ahead and get things kicked off. Tonight is U.S. Abby Girl is up for the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. So if you are of mine, please stand, remove your hat if you're wearing one, like me, and place your hand over your heart and follow along with U.S. Abby Girl as she recites the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And, of course, I thank you, U.S. Abby Girl, for that wonderful rendition of the pledge. If you would like to hear your rendition of the pledge played here on the program, all you need to do is record yourself reciting or performing the pledge in your style. Then take that audio file, video file, whatever kind of file, and send it off to me. Attach it to an email and send it to fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. All right. Tonight's headline sponsor, oh, goodness. There we go. Is theflagshirt.com. That's right, theflagshirt.com. And they are having their annual After the 4th sale, where you get 10% off site-wide if you use the promo code SUMMER, S-U-M-M-E-R, 10. That's SUMMER 10. So summer and the number 1 and 0 after it, all one word, is the promo code. And all you need to do is when you go there and you go to check out all of their styles. But then when you go to checkout, there's a promo code box there. You just put summer 10, summer 10 in the promo code box at checkout, and they will give you 10% off. This goes for everything that they have, whether it is men's, women's, kids, made in the USA, their 4th of July outfits. That should be in Independence Day outfits, but whatever. All of those shirts, you'll see me wear them at times. I'm not wearing one right now because it's a little hot for me to wear a polo shirt. But, you can go and check it all out at theflagshirt.com. But I know, sometimes some people like to get $5 off, and 10% off might only be like $1 or $2 or 50 cents or whatever. So what I am doing for you is and I got to figure out which button that is. I am giving you $5 off if you go to flagshirt.americanperspective.online. That's flagshirt.americanperspective.online. You'll be presented with a promo code, a different promo code, where you can take that promo code, stick it in the box, the promo code box at checkout, and get $5 off your order if you want. Also, don't forget, if you order $75 or more, they always give free shipping. So you can make your choice. You can either take the 10% off, you can take the $5 off, or if you order $75 or more, you can get free shipping and choose between either the 10% off or the $5 off, whichever way you want to go. Okay? Go to theflagshirt.com today, pick out one of their styles, and get yourself patriotized. All right. Did I? Yes, I did. Okay. So let's go ahead and start off with an easy one. So the leftist lunatics who have been trying to block Donald Trump from, cutting bureaucracy, meaning getting rid of all kinds of staff. Well, the Supreme Court has actually approved or sided with Donald Trump in a couple of cases here recently. The latest, of course, is the one where they just ruled today that the Trump administration can go ahead and, they can, he can lay off all kinds of people for now. This is in the education department. So they cleared the way for the education department to fire hundreds of employees today, a move that advances President Donald Trump's plans to dismantle the department. The High Court's decision on the McMahon versus State of New York was issued 6-3, along ideological lines, of course. The decision temporarily pauses an order by a lower court judge that had reinstated roughly 1,400 laid-off employees at the Education Department. In March, Education Secretary Linda McMahon had laid off half of the department's workforce as part of the Trump administration's broader reduction in force efforts. Later that month, Trump announced an executive order that he planned to shutter the department altogether. And the Supreme Court's order arose from two separate lawsuits, one being brought by 20 Democratic-led states that challenged the Education Department's layoffs and planned closure. Now, again, folks, just to point this out, and people talk about Trump, and by people, I mean the morons on the left, talk about Trump not being constitutional. Well, guess what? This is constitutional, folks. Shutting down the Department of Education is constitutional. There is nothing in the Constitution that states the federal government's job is to create a Department of Education. In fact, it didn't even exist until Congress created it via statute, and which they shouldn't have. They shouldn't have been able to, because again, that's not part of Article 1, Section 8, which is what the Congress is supposed to be making laws on, because the 10th Amendment pretty much says, hey, if it's not in the Constitution already, nor prohibited by it to the states, it belongs to the states and to the people respectively, meaning that education doesn't show up in the Constitution under Article 1, Section 8. So therefore, they are not supposed to be making laws on this stuff. Now, unfortunately, because it is a congressional statute, the reality of it is that he is going to, he can't just like go and say, okay, this is done and over with. Congress is going to have to follow this up to prevent it from being reinstated afterward. But I'm kind of hoping that the Congress will go ahead and do this. So anyway, yeah, the Department of Education is not part of the constitutional mandated responsibilities of the federal government and therefore should be shut down. Same thing goes with all the health care and everything else. And, I'm trying to understand why these really smart lawyers are not challenging these things. And I'm not talking about the left. I'm talking about the right. I'm talking about the right, meaning the conservatives, that they're not challenging this on 10th Amendment basis. I have yet to see a single case that has gone in front of the Supreme Court that is challenged based off the 10th Amendment. And realistically, I think that is probably the strongest case that you could possibly make to the Supreme Court. Is like, hey, folks, Supreme Court, yo, you guys are supposed to uphold the Constitution and say whether things are constitutional or not. Well, here's the 10th Amendment, and it basically says if it's not written in the Constitution, it doesn't belong to the Constitution. It belongs to the states. I don't know why nobody has made that argument yet. These lawyers seem to try and make the arguments on other things. Well, if I were to win the lottery and had enough money from the lottery, I'd probably find a way or try to find a way to bring the 10th Amendment to the attention of the Supreme Court and be like, hey, yo, justices, you guys, you need to pay attention here. This is the 10th Amendment. We're supposed to be following this. But I digress because I'm not a millionaire and I'm not slated to win the lottery at any time soon. So anyway, yeah, so the Supreme Court has now basically said, yeah, you know what? He kind of has the ability to do whatever he can, you know, as far as the, whether or not the bureaucracy is in control. So this is the thing about it that a lot of people really don't understand is the president has carte blanche, by the way. The president has carte blanche to basically decide how to implement a law, as long as he or she is doing so within his or her constitutional boundaries. He can implement it with just one person. I mean, if you read any of these laws, they don't actually write out, hey, we're going to set this aside. You know, we're setting this money aside. We're setting this money aside to create positions for about 1,000 people, and they have to be XYZ, PDQ, whatever. No, none of these laws are actually that specific or detailed. 99% of the time, it's just, hey, we're setting aside $1.5 million to create this department, and this department is going to do X, whatever that is. I mean, take a look at the whole USAID thing. You know, that was supposed to be under the State Department. It doesn't say that USAID itself is the actual department or the actual thing that has to do this. No, it just basically said, hey, we want to set aside a certain amount of money run by the State Department. The State Department will determine and oversee the management of this whatever organization. So, yeah. Anyway. So there you go. It's you know, again, this is part of the ignorance, I should say, about all of this. With when it comes to the Constitution, it's reading and understanding it, and actually understand the historical significance of the Constitution is really the main piece out of all of this. And so, yeah, this Supreme Court order, not surprising, to be honest with you, not surprising at all for anyone who is paying attention and understands the Constitution and how our government is supposed to be run, which is part of the reason why a lot of these leftists are running all over the social medias, and they're all saying, oh my God, Trump is burning down America. No, he's not. He's not. He's actually bringing it back to where its constitutional boundaries are supposed to be. He's actually bringing it back and following the Constitution. He is not a individual who is going against the Constitution, unlike Obama, where I can rule with a phone and a pen. Yeah, that was a horrible Obama impersonation. But anyway. All right, so we now have some information about the assassin that happened in Minnesota. So apparently the perpetrator, the man accused of what a lot of people believe is a political charged double homicide of the Minnesota House Speaker and her husband, he is actually now denying that these killings were actually politically or ideologically motivated. So he has been communicating, apparently, through the prison system, and he is essentially has a series of messages and video calls from inside the Sherburne County Jail. This gentleman told the Post this week that neither Donald Trump nor abortion actually played a role in the events that led to him killing those two on June 14th and attempting to kill the other two. He wrote through the jail's internal messaging system, "You are fishing and I can't talk about my case. I'll say it didn't involve either the Trump stuff or pro-life." So, yeah. Again, keep in mind, these people, the left, wanted to try and make him out to be some right-wing nut job. Well, he is a nut job. Don't get me wrong. He is a complete nut job. But, yeah, his first public comments outside of his brief court appearances were the remarks to the Post and electronic messages and 2 20-minute video visits this last Friday. So, yeah, he essentially is saying that he can't really talk about it, but he keeps referencing some sort of a handwritten 1.5-page letter that was found in the abandoned SUV left at the scene. The letter was addressed to FBI Director Kash Patel. However, the perpetrator suggests that key details of that letter have not been disclosed. So he asked during one of his video visits, he goes, "Can I ask what you heard as an outside person about the note that the alleged person, I'll say alleged person, left in the car? Did you hear anything about that?" And after hearing about it, he claimed that there were some elements of the letter that were actually leaked, but a lot more important details were actually left out. He said that he made sure that he was arrested, that when he was arrested, that they secured the letter, and he made the request that they secure the letter before it got destroyed because he was concerned that somebody would destroy the letter. Apparently, this guy has a letter that he put forth. I'm assuming that letter is sort of like, "Hey, this is why I did it." But he claims that there's going to be a lot of information that came out. So, anyway. And despite the presence of the political materials that he had, he's denied any connection to Trump or abortion activism, stating that more information would emerge that goes back 24 months before the 14th. So, yeah. Anyway. I mean, granted, he's a nut job. He also, I mean, just the fact that he did this thing is, enough. But he talks. He also claims that his wife, nor his family had anything to do with it. That he did not communicate any information about what he was doing to any of them. So he's essentially basically saying that, hey, my family should be off limits. They don't know anything. Now, that being said, hopefully we'll find out more when it comes to the trial. But at least he is starting to talk, and he is basically saying that, well, it's not politically or ideologically motivated. So then what was your motivation other than the fact that you're a crazy lunatic? That would be the first question on my mind. But hey, whatever. All right. So this weekend on Saturday, and actually, let me go ahead and get this out of the way before I get into the next topic. So I need to get up and have my big old cup of coffee. my 16-ounce big old cup of coffee in order to get my day started. In fact, there are some days that I get up that my brain just doesn't really start functioning until that first caffeine hit comes in and, starts my brain really functioning in the morning. All right. Well, this is for those who are with me, but also have not tried 1775 coffee yet. So now is the best time for you to go ahead and gain essentially a sampling of the 1775 coffee, because the 1775 coffee starter kit just dropped. There's a limited number of units available. Now, here's what you're getting in the starter kit. You're getting a bold dark roast that hits harder than a CNN fact check. You're getting the smooth medium roast, a try, and you're also going to try or get the Vitality Mushroom Coffee for clean energy and laser focus with no crash. You can take your pick out of all three, and whatever you like, obviously, you can continue with that, but try all three of them. That's what comes in the starter kit. But, and one thing about these things, before I go on, one thing about these things is all of these coffees are single origin, small batch, toxin-free, and mold-free. But you're also getting my personal favorite, the gold spoon clip, because freedom isn't scooped with plastic. And you're getting a frother strong enough to stir up your coffee and your mother-in-law's political opinions, as well as a black 1775 tumbler that says, I don't take life advice or caffeine from a woke sea witch. It's $170 worth of coffee and gear, yours for just $99. This is for the ones who have been watching 1775 coffee blow up on Rumble and wondering if it's actually worth it. Spoiler alert, it is. Go to 1775coffee.com / that's the question mark key for those who are wondering, / studio, STUDIO, and grab your starter kit before they are gone. Go to 1775coffee, that's the numbers 1775, the word coffee, all one word, .com / studio, STUDIO, and grab your starter kit before they are gone. Bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something, just like Rumble does. Start your day with coffee that actually backs what you believe. Go to 1775coffee.com / studio, STUDIO, and grab your starter kit before they are gone. All right. So, let's talk about the Autopen. Everybody seems to think that the Autopen is this, like, special, magical thing. And it sort of is. I mean, the technology has actually been around since Thomas Jefferson days. In fact, let me show you a photo. There's a photo of what Thomas Jefferson actually used. He called it, or it was called, the polygraph device. And this was before the actual polygraph that we know of it today, the lie detector tests, was actually invented. However, Jefferson used this item while he was in office. So use of a mechanical copying device goes all the way back to Thomas Jefferson's days. However, there is a catch. Regardless of how far back you go, the Autopen mechanism, whatever you call it, was not really used for the signing of legislation or other important documents, realistically, until Barack Obama actually did it in 2 cases. So, the thing about the Autopen is there is some questionability. So the Autopen itself wasn't used in the White House until the 1950s, okay? And so, again, it wasn't used up until that point, but Harry Truman was the first president to use one in office. Kennedy allegedly made substantial use of the device. And it was all a closely guarded secret, historically speaking, until Gerald Ford's administration publicly acknowledged the fact that they were using it. But the Autopen traditionally was reserved for things like personal correspondence and other kinds of documents. Never really for official signing a bill into law until Barack Obama did so on May 26th, 2011, when he authorized an extension of the Patriot Act from France. Now, Obama also used it again to approve a fiscal cliff deal and has returned, and by doing so, returned the Autopen back into the national spotlight. Now, here's the thing, okay? There's a lot of discussion in terms of the use of the Autopen when it comes to signing official documents, whether it has to deal with pardons or whether it has to deal with legislation. Again, the tradition of its use was not to actually sign legislation. It was used for other kinds of documents, again, personal correspondence, things like that. And so there is some question in terms of the legality of it. Now, we all know in today's day and age, we've got now DocuSign, electronic signs, E-Verify, all these different kinds of official legal signing. Like, for an example, my last mortgage that I did it literally via electronic mail. And what ended up happening is I had verification. I did e-signing, and that was allowed by law. But the question basically is, with regards to our nation and its legislation and signing it into law, is whether or not that was actually intended by the framers to be allowed. Now, the Constitution itself doesn't really talk about the use of any kind of device like that, even though Thomas Jefferson obviously had one. So and just the plain and simple fact, now keep in mind, Thomas Jefferson was in France at the time that the Constitution was written. So he didn't really have a lot of connection to the Constitution, unlike what a lot of people seem to believe when they mix up the Declaration of Independence, which Thomas Jefferson wrote all himself for the most part. And the Congress, the Continental Congress, changed it, modified it and changed it. But if we pull out our handy dandy Constitution under Article 1, Section 7, and we read, every bill which shall have passed the House of Representatives and the Senate shall, before it become a law, be presented to the President of the United States, and if approved, he shall sign it. But if not, he shall return it with his objections to that House in which it shall have originated, who shall enter the objections at large on their journal and proceed to reconsider it. Now, this particular paragraph is discussing and inferring the veto power of the president, okay? But the key here is the phrase that if he approve, he shall sign it. You guys think you want to sit here and think I'm lying. There it is, right there, right underneath my finger. You can read it. If approved, he shall sign it. Now, keep in mind, this is the basis of the idea of whether or not the Autopen would be considered legally binding. Now, ironically, none of this has ever come before the Supreme Court. And the reason being is because of the fact that the Supreme Court only gets cases that are, questioned or challenged. They can only make an appearance or make a ruling or an opinion on things that are put in front of you. So the thing, or in front of them, I should say. So the thing about it is that we need to really and truly understand what is going on here. Now, one of the questions that has come up with the use of the Autopen has to deal with the idea of pardons. Now, the pardon power is definitely a presidential power. It is broad-ranging. The only, seemingly, the only restriction on it is that the president cannot pardon somebody for future crimes a person may or may not commit. They can only do it if they've already committed a crime, supposedly, but they can do it prior to charging, prior to sentencing. They don't have to really, at least based off of the most recent pardons, especially the one where Joe pardoned his son for 10 years, which, by the way, even that's kind of questionable because he didn't really outline what he did. In fact, the last pardon that had a long period of time was the pardon of that also didn't specify the law that was broken, was the one that Gerald Ford granted President Nixon, or former President Nixon, after he resigned. And so since that one wasn't questioned, they're kind of wondering, or they're, again, the Democrats are sort of pushing the boundaries. And they're basically saying, oh, well, since that one wasn't questioned, we can just pardon anybody for anything in the past. And that's exactly what happened. But the curious nature is that after all of those pardons went through, the only pardon that is actually in Joe Biden's specific handwriting is the one for his son. The rest have all been done through the Autopen. And so here's where the article in the New York Times kind of comes into question and throws into question the idea of Joe Biden using whether or not he knew he was using the Autopen or not. Now, the thing about it is you got to understand is that the New York Times, first of all, is a left-leaning rag. Okay, they are 100% left-leaning. They're going to try and do everything they can to cover for the Democrats, especially somebody like Joe Biden. But here's the problem. The headline doesn't belie the information that is contained within the article. So here's the headline, okay? The headline says, Biden says he made the clemency decisions that were recorded with Autopen. Yeah, sure. Because here, I'm going to scroll down and you got to dig pretty deep. It goes through a lot of different things about it, but you got to dig. Oop. Where is it? I'm still digging, still looking. Ah, here we go. All right. So where this is all coming from is there were a bunch of emails, which, by the way, the emails in question, and there were a bunch of them. They were requested by the New York Times. Joe Biden from the National Archives. Joe Biden had the opportunity to say, "Hey, no, we're not going to give those out," but he didn't. And so they went to the New York Times. He was probably thinking, oh, yeah, this is not going to be a problem. It's good. The New York Times, they're going to cover for my ass. Except there's only one problem. So here, the emails that they collected show that when the White House was preparing, and I'm reading from the piece, by the way, for those on the auto portion of the program, the emails also show that when the White House was preparing to announce clemency grants, communications staff drafted statements explaining the decisions. Mr. Biden had to be shown the drafts, and they could not be released until an aide said that he had approved them. On at least one occasion, wording was tweaked because of what an email said was feedback from Mr. Biden. So here's the problem. There is no direct link from Joe Biden to these aides, meaning that all they know is that there was a layer in between Joe Biden and the aides who were actually doing this, there was a layer in between. And that layer is where the question mark comes into play. Because apparently, according to these aides, Joe Biden would be in a meeting with his top level advisors. He would make some sort of an oral comment or a quote unquote oral request when it came to doing the Autopen. And then that was communicated to the aides, the underlings, as yes, Joe Biden said this. Well, if you've ever played the game called telephone, you know for a fact that when you have somebody inserted in between you and the communicated message, the message can sometimes get garbled. Now, granted, that's usually across a group of individual, but the fact of the matter is there is, at this point, no clear, concise, direct link that puts the people who were in charge of the Autopen directly connected to Joe Biden. All of this was relayed secondhand. This is part of the problem. Okay? Now, here's the next paragraph. Mr. Biden, and this is in specificity for all of the pardons that were issued, especially on his last day in office. Mr. Biden did not individually approve each name for the categorical pardons that applied to large numbers of people. He and his aides both confirmed. So here's the problem, okay? When he was getting ready to leave, the White House staff was preparing for the influx of what usually happens at the end of a president's terms, all of these requests for leniency, clemency, pardons, etc. And as a part of that, the White House staff derived this idea of, hey, we're just going to go and create this category, these categories. So Joe Biden basically says, okay, the people that I want to pardon are going to fall into these groups. And you can start sort of, you guys, meaning the lower underlings, you guys sort out whoever comes in on this. Okay. You guys sort out who fits these criteria and who doesn't. Well, what happened is, even after they made that decision, a former aide also stated that the Bureau of Prisons kept providing additional information about specific inmates, resulting in changes to the list. Okay? So rather than asking Biden to keep signing revised versions, his staff basically just waited and waited and waited, and then just ran the final version through the Autopen. So Joe Biden had no idea who was actually on that list. And herein lies the problem. Because utilizing the Autopen in the past has always come across with the idea, and I've told you this before, legally speaking, the individual who is using the Autopen has to be in the room as the thing is being signed. It wasn't up until Obama used it while he was on the road in France that it had ever been used in a remote meaning him not being present, fashion. All the other times that the Autopen had been used, it was within the presence of the person whose signature was going on the paper. And so, this is where the problem comes into play. Now, there is a case, okay? There is a case, or not a case, not a case, but there is a paper that was written by Syracuse University Law School that outlines, and this is the paper right here. I'm gonna unzoom. So this is the paper right here, and it basically says, the president and the Autopen. It is unconstitutional for someone or something to sign a bill outside of the president's presence. Now, this was put together by Terry Turnipseed, who is the Syracuse University College of Law, or part of it. Now, he wrote this back in 2012, July 24th of 2012. And in this, it goes through the historical and legal precedents in terms of the use of the Autopen. So if it can't be used, if the Autopen is found to not be able to be used to sign something into law based on constitutionality purposes, and pardons could be thrown into that same category because that's an official document. So now there is a case. There is a case that all of the pardons that came out at the very end of Joe Biden's administration, meaning the January 6th committee, Adam Schiff, Liz Cheney, General Miley's, okay? The pardons of his family outside of Hunter Biden. Now, Hunter Biden's could be challenged legally on the fact that it covers a 10-year period, which is completely unheard of in the history of pardons. But the fact of the matter is that there is a challenge, a legal challenge with regards to this. And what the New York Times inadvertently did by writing the article the way that they did and interviewing the aides the way that they did, they have now opened up the door to a potential legal challenge with this entire situation. Now, me personally, I honestly think that the Supreme Court needs to essentially state unequivocally that official documents of the United States government cannot have a artificial signature or artificially generated signature to sign law and pardons. Executive orders, other documents, all of that should be allowed. But the exception is the signature that is required by the president on the things that matter the most, that are on the Constitution. Now, keep in mind, historically speaking, this conversation and the conversation as to what it means by having the president sign it was happening during the Constitutional Convention. And in fact, that's one of the things that they talk about in this law article regarding the importance of the idea that the president physically sign the paper into law. And based on the fact that Thomas Jefferson never used that artificial copy thing, the polygraph, is that he called it, the polygraph, the fact that he never used it is an indication of their understanding of the importance of an actual physical signature, meaning one that was not mechanically reproduced. This is an argument that could definitely be played out in court, and I honestly think it might have some traction. And if it does have some traction, well, all of those people who got pardons that were done by the Autopen, that might be a bit of a problem in their court. That might be a bit of a problem in their court. And so this is going to be quite interesting to see where the government actually goes with this. Where the Trump administration in particular goes with this. Well, speaking about the Trump administration and its legal stature, this article hit, and I found this kind of interesting, but this article hit in Just the News. The FBI has opened what they're calling a grand conspiracy probe on the weaponization of government, which this opening up this grand conspiracy probe opens the door to the assignment of a special prosecutor. Now, there are two documents, according to this article in Just the News, there are two secret documents regarding the DOJ and the FBI's Clinton era antics that could be key if Trump decides to declassify them. Now, according to this piece, and this is unverified other than just the News article, the FBI has quietly launched an investigation into a decade of Democrat Party and deep state antics, from Russian collusion to Jack Smith, opening up the door for the appointment of a special prosecutor to examine whether the well-documented episodes amount to criminal conspiracy to meddle in 3 U.S. elections to the benefit of Democrats and the detriment of President Donald Trump. Now, Bonnie, you hit on something. Bonnie over on Rumble says, hire Matt Gaetz for special prosecutor. It's interesting that you say that because reportedly, and again, this is an unconfirmed report, but reportedly Matt Gaetz skipped the TPUSA event that went on this weekend, and he was reportedly called to the White House to meet with Donald Trump and Pam Bondi. Now, I'm not one for conspiracies. I am only merely reporting something that has been put out in the news. I am not confirming anything. However, it does seem sort of interesting, the correlation between that news report and this news report. Now, so the grand conspiracy case, this is back to the piece. The grand conspiracy case was opened several weeks ago after the new FBI Director Kash Patel took over. And it could get a significant boost if Trump were to declassify what they are calling 2 secret tranches of evidence that identify a potential ignition point to the alleged conspiracy in the summer of 2016. According to several people directly familiar with the inquiry who spoke to Just the News on condition of anonymity. The first piece of evidence, according to this article, says that it's supposed to be a classified annex to a years-old Inspector General probe of Hillary Clinton's improper email server sought by the Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley. That annex is apparently believed to show that credible information about possible wrongdoing was intentionally ignored by the FBI. So now, here's the tie. You know that Comey was the one that basically said, yeah, there's potential in terms of Hillary Clinton's email scandal. Yeah, there's a potential that she broke the law, but, no prosecutor is going to take this case. And so we're just not going to prosecute. You remember that? Do you remember that announcement? And do you also remember that Comey and Brennan are now under investigation, or reported to have been under investigation? You got to wonder if this is like tying all together. Okay? You got to wonder. Now, the second tranche of evidence was identified by former Russiagate special counsel John Durham in his final report. That evidence was dubbed in the report as the Clinton Plan Intelligence, and it was also placed in a classified annex kept from the American public and even many members of Congress. Now, excerpts from the publicly available and unclassified Durham report show that U.S. spy agencies were aware that Clinton's 2016 campaign was concocting a bogus Russian collusion narrative to harm Trump's election chances before the FBI opened its now discredited Crossfire Hurricane probe, in part using evidence created by the Clinton campaign or offered by Clinton associates. Now, keep in mind, This is all bits and pieces that are starting to look like they're coming together. Okay? So, all of this is wrapped also, believe it or not, around the Epstein list. And the reason being is because of the fact that you've got all of this stuff going on in the background, and you have the Epstein list in the foreground, where even now, the Epstein list is being requested by all of these Democrats who are essentially thinking that because Donald Trump is holding back on this thing, and because of the fact that Donald Trump has openly come out and said, quit. The Epstein list, there's nothing there. Just shut up and move on. Okay? Essentially, not exactly in those words, but basically essentially. And so now it's I'm starting to question whether or not the whole Epstein files thing is possibly just a smoke and mirrors to have the press, ooh, shiny object over here, shiny object, and then do things in the background. So I'm kind of wondering about all of this. I'll be honest with you. I don't think if there were an Epstein list, assuming that, and I've said this on this program, if there were an Epstein list and if Donald Trump was actually on it, there is absolutely zero possibility. In fact, there's even less of zero of a possibility that the Democrats wouldn't have leaked it, that they wouldn't have put it out in the public and plastered it everywhere. There is absolutely no way that Donald Trump is on any sort of an Epstein list outside of what we already know, which is the fact that he did borrow or fly on Epstein's plane between Florida and New York and back again. We already know all of that. That's been proven. Epstein flight logs have been leaked and released. If there was anything more to it than just that, believe me, it would have been a lot more out there. Okay? The Democrats having 4 years in office and Congress would have easily put that out think about it. Freaking Adam Schiff and the Democrat-run administration leaked like a freaking sieve, and that thing, if Donald Trump was on it, oh my gosh, they would have go ahead and just, they would have stuck that in as soon as they can. All right? So, as far as that goes, now the other names on the list, or the other names reported to be on the list, unfortunately, that's their problem. I'm just simply saying that Donald Trump is not on that list, and he is the only one that I would be relatively certain of. I'm like 98.9% certain that he is not there, because if he was there, they would have released it by now. It would have been released and plastered everywhere, I promise you. But all of that being the case, okay, the question is now whether or not all of these things are wrapped around one another. That all of these things that are occurring, that we're starting to see and starting to notice, whether or not they're all kind of wrapped around and together with one another. Because again, keep in mind, the left don't do anything by themselves. The left does everything in the hive mind, Borg-like fashion. I guarantee you that if there were any sort of possibility that Donald Trump was on it, it would have gone. It definitely would have gone. So, yeah, this is going to be kind of interesting. And by the way, too, I'm also heard, don't know if this is true, but I also heard that Dan Bongino has not made his decision yet as to whether or not he is going to leave the FBI, but he's still focused, and is still, I guess, according to reports, questioning. So we'll just have to see what happens with Dan Bongino. But Kash Patel, like I told you on Saturday, Kash Patel has clearly stated that he is not going anywhere, regardless of what happens with Pam Bondi. So, yeah. So there you go. Well, as a part of the Epstein files and the Epstein list and all of this Epstein upstart, and yeah, Nana of JJS points out that Dan did go to work today. So he was only off on I think toward the end of last week. So there you go. But anyway, yeah, and I agree with you, Bonnie. I will wait, and I agree. I will wait until Dan makes a statement of his own. But yeah, I do personally believe that Pam Bondi screwed the pooch. Sorry for the phraseology, but she did screw the pooch the way she handled it. If there really is no Epstein list, she never should have even answered or even said that, oh yeah, the list is on my desk. Even though she may have done it in the heat of the moment, and it's entirely possible that's the case. But at the same time, though, you're the Attorney General of the United States. You're supposed to be a little bit more intelligent than that. I mean, just saying. You shouldn't be caught in those kinds of gaffes or whatever. But anyway, I digress. Let me go back. Because of all this Epstein stuff that's going on, okay, we now have AOC. And AOC made a really stupid move. I mean, just a completely stupid move. So she wrote on X this. Wow. Who would have thought that electing a rapist would have complicated the release of the Epstein files? Yeah. So you're obviously thinking or referring to Donald Trump. Well, there's only one problem. Donald Trump is not a rapist. In order to be a rapist, you have to be criminally convicted of the crime. You also would have had to have been found liable for that crime in a civilian court or a civil court of law. Well, guess what? Donald Trump is neither. And, by the way, ABC, George Stephanopoulos, okay, called Trump a rapist on live television. And, yeah, it cost the network $15 million. Now, Three Chevy asks, can she get sued for that? Absolutely, she can. She does not have, just because she, and I've shown this to you in the Constitution, just because she is a representative, she does not have immunity from arrest or being sued or anything else because she said it outside of Congress doing her job. So absolutely, she opened herself up for a possible defamation lawsuit. So, yeah, and I'm not the only one that's called it out. So, AOC sparked significant backlash. This is in Town Hall, by the way. AOC sparked significant backlash after calling President Trump a rapist on a social media post, implying that his time in the White House disrupted that his time in the White House disrupted the Justice Department's investigation into the late Jeffrey Epstein. Critics quickly pushed back, accusing the Congresswoman of defamation and highlighting that Trump has never been criminally convicted of rape. The remark has drawn criticism from legal experts and political opponents alike, with some warning that it could have serious consequences. Absolutely. She absolutely can get sued by this. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think that Trump's going to take that sitting down. After he's already won one case over this, I'll bet you that he can do it against her again. Because keep in mind, he wasn't president at the time that this happened, and that they've been accusing him of all of this. And so I would say I would not be surprised if he's consulted with lawyers. Now, whether or not they actually determine, is it really worth it to go after her? I don't know. But I'll tell you what, if it does happen, I think it would be incredibly funny and incredibly well deserved. All right. So that is it for me for this evening. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, head on over to rumble.com, get yourself an account. It is free. And once you are signed up and signed in, make sure that you Make sure that you search up the American Perspective channel and hit that green follow button to get notified every time I go live. Also, too, don't forget to hit those thumbs up, or if you really want to, you can give me a thumbs down across all of my platforms, whether it's X, YouTube, Facebook, and of course, the aforementioned Rumble. We will see you tomorrow night, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on American Perspective. Have a great rest of your evening, and good night, everybody.